You've just walked out of an argument. You said everything you needed to say. You made your points clearly, expressed your feelings, and were honest. But inside there's this sense of defeat, like something was lost. A tightness in your throat, a tense body, and that urge. You wish you had stayed silent. Have you ever felt that? It's as if, even when we speak, something in us drains away. As if we're fighting in an arena where the rules are unclear. Often this happens when we're surrounded by people who use aggression as a tool of domination. They're not there to listen. They're there to win, to silence, to impose. And what's left? A silent belief planted deep down that maybe silence is weakness, that if you don't fight back, you're losing, that if you don't win the argument, then you're being swallowed whole. But what if I told you that's a trap? This idea that you always need to react, to argue, to defend yourself, could be draining your energy and pulling you further away from who you really are. Because in the end, it's not about winning the argument, it's about not losing yourself in it. And this is where one of the greatest secrets of inner strength comes in, one that almost no one talks about. Picture this. You're in a crowded room. Tension hangs in the air. Someone tries to provoke you, to push you into reacting, but you remain silent, not out of fear, but out of awareness. You observe, you breathe, and the entire atmosphere begins to shift. Silence has power, a power that isn't absence, it's presence. While many talk too much to prove a point, silence unsettles. It forces the other person to confront what they're saying. And do you know why? Because silence is uncomfortable. It shows confidence. It disrupts the rhythm. It reveals. Talking too much often means handing over ammunition. It shows anxiety. It's an attempt to convince when you're not even sure of what you're saying. It's an attempt to dominate because deep down, you're feeling small. Silence is different. It's strategic, intelligent, lethal. It's the kind of strength that doesn't shout. It simply watches and chooses the right moment to act, if it's necessary. And many times, it's not. So next time someone tries to corner you, try this. Take a deep breath and don't respond right away. Feel the discomfort. Feel the power of being whole even without saying a word. But there's something even deeper beneath all of this. Have you ever stopped to think about why some people don't actually want to resolve a conflict? They just want to win. And even worse, why do we sometimes fall into that same pattern without even realizing it? There's a darker reason behind empty arguments, and a philosopher explained it over 100 years ago. His name, Nietzsche. And what he understood about human nature might completely change the way you approach conflict from now on. Picture this. You walk into an argument thinking you're going to clear things up, but 5 minutes later, it's all turned into a contest. Raised voices, subtle jabs, a game to see who wins. In the end, no one listens to anyone. All that's left is exhaustion and frustration. Know why? Because most of the time, people don't want the truth. They want power. Nietzsche saw this with striking clarity. Arguments are often not a search for solutions. They're a disguised way of protecting the ego. When someone pressures you to explain yourself better, they're not always interested in what you feel. They're testing your firmness. They're trying to put you in the defendant's seat. And the worst part? We fall for it. The constant need to justify everything we think, feel, or choose is, deep down, a form of submission. It's like asking for permission to exist the way we are. Nietzsche called this the morality of the herd, a behavior driven by the need for safety through the approval of others. It means living according to what the group expects, avoiding conflict, even if it costs you your truth. But here's the problem. Those who live to please others end up abandoning themselves. So what can you do about it? Observe more and explain yourself less. Your truth doesn't need an audience or applause. You don't need to win the argument. You need to win the impulse to prove something all the time. And that brings us to the next step, one that's even more challenging. Picture this. Someone verbally attacks you, tries to belittle you, provoke you, throw you off balance, and you don't react. You just observe, not out of apathy, but out of control, out of awareness. You see everything, but you don't let it shake you. That is inner strength. Truly, the strongest are those who feel no need to convince anyone of anything. They know who they are, they know what they carry, and they can be misunderstood without losing their center. That's rare, because the instinct is to react, to argue, to defend. But a reactive mind is always a mind that can be manipulated. A mind that observes, though, dominates. And that's the difference between someone living on autopilot and someone who masters themselves. Real victory doesn't lie in winning arguments, but in not needing to enter them at all. And if you think about it, the moments when you truly felt strong were the ones when you didn't need to prove anything. You just stood there, grounded, at peace, centered in yourself. Want to train this? Next time you feel the urge to respond, argue, or justify yourself, pause, go silent, watch what happens inside you. That is your real battlefield, and that's where evolution begins. But there's a figure who took this to another level, an idea Nietzsche created that represents the pinnacle of self-mastery. This being doesn't just control his reactions, he transcends ordinary behavior. He observes in silence, imposes presence effortlessly, and reveals the weakness of others with nothing but a glance. This being is the Übermensch, or the Overman, and what he represents could completely change the way you understand silence. Let me explain. A group is deep in conversation, voices raised, trading heated opinions. In the corner of the room, one person simply watches, silent, calm, yet their presence is felt, not because of what they say, but because of what they radiate. This is the kind of person Nietzsche called the Übermensch, the Overman. He doesn't live by ordinary rules. He doesn't seek approval. He has mastered himself so deeply that he no longer needs the last word. While most people stir and scramble, he observes. While others speak to prove something, he remains silent, to preserve his strength. Each word is like an arrow, only released if truly necessary. Each reaction, a revealing move, which is why he chooses them sparingly. And what happens when someone like that enters the room? The atmosphere shifts, because true power doesn't shout, doesn't explain, doesn't justify itself. It simply is, and silence becomes its armor. But there's more. This silence doesn't just protect, it disorients those around it. And that's when the game changes entirely. Picture this. You're in a conversation with someone and suddenly the person goes silent. They don't respond, don't react. They just stare at you. Your mind starts racing. What are they thinking? Are they judging me? Did I say something wrong? This is the hidden power of silence. What almost no one realizes is that silence has a deep psychological effect. It triggers fears, insecurities, old wounds. When the other person doesn't react, you lose control of the narrative, and the mind, which craves predictability, goes into panic. Manipulators, for instance, feed off your reaction. If you speak, they shape your words. If you push back, they twist your message. But if you don't react, they completely lose their power. Because silence forces the other to confront themselves, to hear their own voice echo back at them. And that's unbearable for those who lack inner peace. Do you know what that means for you? That instead of responding to everything, you can start using silence as a shield, not to avoid conflict, but to take control of your emotional space. Next time someone tries to provoke you, try silence. It's not passivity, it's mastery. And within that mastery lies one of the most strategic tools you can ever develop. Now, if you're wondering, but how do I apply this in real life without seeming arrogant or distant? I'm going to show you. Because there is a practical and powerful way to use silence as a strategic weapon. And it involves 4 key skills that can completely change the way you deal with people and conflict. The first one starts the moment everything in you wants to react, but you don't. Let me explain how to use this to your advantage. Right now, you're in the middle of an argument. Blood is boiling. Your mind has lined up 1,000 arguments. Everything in you wants to react. But then, you choose silence. not as an escape, but as strategy. That's the moment you start to master the psychological game. Strategic silence is a tool of power, and it has 4 sharp weapons. First weapon, self-control. Staying silent when every fiber of your being wants to explode. That's not weakness, it's mastery. Anyone can shout. Few can stay silent without repressing themselves. When you choose silence, you show that you're no longer reacting to the world, you're guiding yourself. Second weapon, active observation. You listen like a hunter, not like someone just waiting for their turn to speak. While others talk, you gather data. You catch what wasn't said. You see patterns, insecurities, contradictions, and then you know exactly where to act or where not to waste your energy. Third weapon, time. Silence creates pauses, and in those pauses, people reveal themselves. The discomfort of silence pushes them to over-explain, to try to fill the void, and they end up exposing themselves. You've seen this, right? Sometimes those who talk the most are hiding the most. Fourth weapon, unpredictability. If you respond all the time, you become predictable, and predictability is weakness. But silence, it throws people off. They don't know if you agree, disagree, if you'll act or disappear, and that makes you feared. So from now on, don't underestimate silence. Use it like an invisible sword, one that cuts without being seen. But here's something important. Not all silence is strength. There's a kind of silence that actually weakens you from within, and that's what we need to talk about now. You know that feeling of shrinking yourself down, of wanting to say something, but staying quiet out of fear of bothering someone, sounding annoying, or causing drama? That's submissive silence. And it's not power, it's self-denial. A lot of people live in silence, not out of wisdom, but because they've gotten used to swallowing everything. They avoid conflict, avoid confrontation, avoid even being noticed. But this peace at any cost comes with a heavy price. You start to disappear inside your own life. Active silence, on the other hand, is completely different. It comes from control, not fear. It's the silence of someone who is present, alert, grounded, even without saying a word. It's the gaze that holds a room. It's the absence of response that weighs more than 1,000 words. Now here's the issue. Many people confuse the two. They wear submissive silence as if it were maturity, as if always staying quiet were a virtue. But deep down, they're just suppressing their own voice and convincing themselves that this is what growth looks like. You weren't made to dim yourself. You were made to choose when to speak and when to remain silent. The difference is in the intention. If you stay silent because you're at peace, you are powerful. If you stay silent because you're afraid, you're giving yourself away. So watch your silences. Are they protecting you nor hiding you? Now think with me. If so many people get used to living quietly, dimmed, erased, is that really just about personal insecurity? Or is there a system behind it, one that teaches you to feel guilty for standing your ground? There is such a system, and it disguises itself as virtue, morality, good behavior. Nietzsche called it slave morality. And understanding how it works might just be the turning point to break free from this invisible domestication. I'm going to explain exactly how it works right now. Ever since you were a child, you were taught that being the nice one is the right path, that giving in is maturity, that staying quiet is a virtue. But what if I told you that this might just be programming, designed to keep you obedient? There's an invisible and ruthless system that teaches you to shrink and even feel proud of it. Nietzsche called it slave morality. It's a morality built to keep you small, compliant, and passive. You learn to give up your desires and call it humility. You learn to endure injustice and call it maturity. You learn not to react and think that's evolution, but deep down it's just psychological domestication. You know that feeling of resignation? That little voice that whispers, just accept it, it'll hurt less. You weren't born with that. It was planted in you, planted by a system that doesn't want you to question, that doesn't want you to express yourself, because silenced people are easy to control. And the worst part? You start to believe you're being noble, But in practice, you're just being submissive. You swallow disrespect. You erase your presence. You apologize for existing and feel good about it. Is that really maturity, or is it fear dressed up as virtue? Nietzsche didn't write for those who wanted to please everyone. He wrote for those ready to break invisible chains, for those tired of being quiet on the inside just to be accepted on the outside. Now, if this slave morality keeps you domesticated, then there is a way out. And it starts the moment you decide to take your power back, not by yelling, not by dominating, but by standing tall in your truth, even if no one claps, even if no one understands, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Because true power doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from being free. And freedom begins when you stop asking for permission to be entero. Imagine the opposite of submission, not arrogance, not aggression, but a calm, firm presence, impossible to ignore. A person who doesn't need to shout, because their silence already says everything. This is the path of the Übermensch, Nietzsche's overman. A being who does not follow the morality of the herd, who does not live for approval, who does not ask permission to be who they are. And it's not about becoming a rebel without a cause. It's about taking control of your own narrative. You stop being manipulated, and you begin to choose. You remain silent, yes, but now out of conviction. You are silent not because you are afraid, but because you know you don't need to prove anything. The Übermensch creates their own values. They do not inherit morality. They build their own. And this construction starts with a choice to stop being reactive and become the author of your own existence. Next time you feel the need to explain who you are, don't explain. Show, live, be. Because those who understand your energy don't need captions. And those who don't understand won't believe you even if you speak. This transition doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with a state of presence, with the simple act of remembering who you are before trying to please anyone. If this content helped you, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. I'll see you in the next video.